Hi, I'm William Marks.
And I'm Mike Wallace, and this is the Vineyard Voice.
Hi, welcome back to the Vineyard Voice and our guest, Mike Wallace. Mike, thanks for coming over today.
Pleasure, Will.
I know your schedule is very demanding, but I think when you're on the vineyard, perhaps you hopefully have a little bit more time for R&R.
That's what the vineyard's all about for me. We've been coming here for years, and I must say that after about the first 10 days, when you really begin to let down from the stress or whatever of the city and the job, it's just an extraordinary place.
I was watching you play tennis the other day at Celebrity Tennis for the Nathan Mayhew seminars.
Yes.
And your game seemed very strong, Mike.
For an old man, actually, what I try to do is to play every week, once a week during the year, when I'm in town, when I'm in New York City, and not out on the road someplace. And then when you get up here, you realize how out of shape you are, and how one is, and how out of shape your game is, too. So when you saw me at the Nathan Mayhew Celebrity Tennis Tournament, that was about 3 weeks into the vacation, and by that time my wind was beginning to come back, and some of my strokes were beginning to come back, and we had a good time. And of course, it's such a good idea to work in whatever way we can for the Nathan Mayhew seminars, because they do good work, interesting work. I try to talk there each year, too.
Great.
And to give it a little extra money, too, because it's so useful.
It is good for the vineyard community. People such as yourself being here, I feel, is good. You seem to put your time to a constructive purpose to help the vineyard, Mike.
Well, it's not just a question of helping the vineyard, it's a question of being grateful to the vineyard for everything that it gives to us, the summer residents. And this is really, as you say, R&R time. You see friends, what happens on the summer here is that we see friends that we don't see during the year. And then suddenly summertime comes along, and night for night, day for day, tennis, drinking, reading, playing, eating, whatever. You have an opportunity to understand other people, people whom you like, but you don't see during the year, and understand yourself a little bit better, too.
That's very nice. I noticed Mike Wallace practicing the art of compromise on the tennis court.
Oh?
Which surprised me after reading Art Buckwell's review of the way Mike Wallace
Surprises
is so
me,
serious.
too.
You actually, when the game was at a draw, you said leave it that way. You didn't want to play for the set.
To see who was going to win. Well,
Yes.
George Plimpton had to get on a plane, number one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And number two, of course, I didn't want to lose. So I settled for the tie instead.
Has CBS given any serious consideration to your proposal of a tennis court?
On the roof of the
Yes.
building in which 60 Minutes operates? Well, we've talked to them about it a lot, but no, they've given no serious attention to that proposal, even when they were making a lot of money and things were very good. And now that expenses are high and income somewhat lower, and we're losing jobs, I think our chances of getting a tennis court on the roof are nil.
I liked your evaluation of yourself in your book, Close Encounters, where you said that if there was ever an epitaph to be written for Mike Wallace, tough but fair.
Well, I think the job of the reporter, by and large, it seems to me, is to be proxy for the audience. You've got to study the subject and ask the questions which you feel the audience wants asked, particularly if they had studied it as much as you. And some of those questions are to get behind the facade, to try to understand what's really going on behind the scenes. You don't want to do that in a way, however, so that's tough. You don't want to do that in a way which takes advantage of somebody or holds somebody up to public ridicule for no reason. If the man's a crook, then I have no compunction about going after him hard. But if he's simply trying to explain a point of view, let's say, or some kind, or to go through the exposition of some business that he's in, or something political that he's in, then you should ask the tough questions, but you should be fair. And by and large, I think that we succeed in doing that. You see, on 60 Minutes, and this business of tough but fair is important.
Mm-hmm.
On 60 Minutes, when we bring in a rough cut, which is the long version of the piece that you're going to see on the air, which is somewhat shorter, we take that rough cut and show it to executive editors who are above us and who have fresh eyes about a given story. And they say, well, look, Mike, perhaps you're doing too much here, not enough here. Was that question fair? Is that answer sufficient? Is this all he said? Mm-hmm. So that there's an opportunity for the piece to remain tough. But because somebody outside, an editor outside of your own head and of the producer's head, is working on it, there's an opportunity for fairness to be assured.
You seem to have an uncanny ability, I think, to delve into the psyche of the person that you're across from and to actually sense what that person is going through. And it seems to come out in your interviews. You know when someone is going through a difficult period in one of your interviews, Mike.
Well, the basis, in my mind, the basis for any good interview, first of all, is a clear throat.
Yes.
Pardon me. The basis for a good interview is thorough research by the person who's doing the interviewing. If you have read as much as you can about me and have seen other interviews, transcripts of other interviews that I've given, and know about certain things that I have gone through professionally or personally, I, as an interviewee, am going to respect that more and probably give more of myself because I say to myself, look, this guy cares about it. He's done research. He wants to know more. And then what you try to do, the interviewer tries to do, is establish a rapport. Mm-hmm. Forget about cameras and lights in the studio.
I don't even know they're here.
Right.
No.
And reach each other's eyes, and in that way, reach each other's minds.
On the personal side of Mike Wallace, it may be interesting since you just touched on that, the personal and the professional. Maybe we could delve into the personal side of Mike Wallace a little bit.
This is a bad idea.
Is it really?
Yeah. You say maybe we could delve into the personal side.
Yes, we will.
Now wait a minute. Now you're announcing that you're about to delve into the personal side, which immediately puts up a barrier.
You're putting up a barrier.
Well, conceivably.
Yes.
If you're into the delving without announcing it, and you sort of sidle into it, suddenly I find myself talking about things that perhaps otherwise I would not talk about.
Thank you. That's excellent.
You'll forgive me for...
Oh, not at all. I think that it's very appropriate, and it's fitting of the nature of Mike Wallace.
And that's because I'm now going to stonewall you.
Yes. Now that you have your guard up.
Right.
Let's touch bases. Let's go through, I would think, the personal side of Mike Wallace and his marriages. Norma Kaphan. Kaphan. Okay. Norma Kaphan, the woman who has conceived two of Mike Wallace's only children.
Correct.
Any reflections on your sweetheart of University of Michigan and that early time of Mike Wallace's career?
Norma Kaphan, who came from New York to Ann Arbor, where we went to school together. I was 2 years ahead of her. And is the mother of Chris, whom you see on the air on NBC, is covering the White House now. And my other son, Peter, who died in a mountain accident in Greece when he was just about, he was a little over 19, is a lovely woman. And we were married when we were too young. And I went away to the Navy.
Yeah.
And I began to understand myself more. And it became quite apparent after a while when I came back and we were back together that that was not going to work. And we remained friends. As a matter of fact, she wound up marrying a man by the name of Bill Leonard, who turned out eventually to be my boss when he was the president of CBS News. And Bill Leonard was the man who chose me as the co-editor of 60 Minutes along with Harry Reasoner when it first went on the air back in 1968.
And then we go to Buff Cobb, the actress.
Then we go to Buff
She
Cobb.
comes on Michael's program, Famous Names.
Famous Names.
And you fall in love. You're smitten.
Well, not right away. She was appearing with Tallulah Bankhead in a play called Private Lives in Chicago, and I was doing Famous Names, a radio interview show on WGN in Chicago. Interviewed her and was interested in her. She was a very attractive and intelligent and bright, New Yorkish young woman. And you're quite right. As a result of meeting her on that interview broadcast, later on, I guess it was a couple of years later on, we were married and eventually moved, first did a show together called Mike and Buff in Chicago. And then CBS heard about us and brought us to New York, where we did a show called Mike and Buff on television, and then did a series called All Around the Town, which was the first time, I believe, that cameras were taken outside the studios and we went to places like the Statue of Liberty or the George Washington Bridge or the Roosevelt Raceway or the wine cellar at 21 and did remote broadcasts.
You and Buff would do this?
Yes. We did
pioneering.
that together. Pioneering of a sort. And eventually that marriage came to an end. Unhappily.
It came to an end as the show came to an end.
Well, I think that because all our eggs were in that basket, the Mike and Buff basket, when the marriage broke up, the show had to. Because it would have been, I think, a little bit strained to have a television show going on that with two people who were in the process of getting divorced, ostensibly a husband and wife team.
That would be rough.
Although that would have been pioneering, too.
Yes, it would have.
But I was not anxious to pioneer in that fashion.
And we'll continue with our I hope this is a pioneering interview with Mike Wallace in one moment. We'll be right back.
I ask you, as an American and a human being, talking to an Iranian and another human being, is there no room for compromise? Or is Iran now, in effect, at war with the United States?
And welcome back to the Vineyard Voice and our guest, Mike Wallace. And
we're going to continue to delve, I take it.
Well, my defenses are coming up now, Michael.
Oh, I see.
We were discussing your second wife and how you did not want to continue the program as you were getting divorced. Now, as I understand it, Mike, on the program you would have actual arguments, and the public was under the impression that these were for entertainment purposes, but as I understand, some of them were honest-to-goodness arguments.
Well, there are differing points of view between many husbands and wives, and some of ours on Mike and Buff were aired. Nothing unpleasant, but a different point of view. And it made for, I must confess, interesting viewing, so that some of the self-conscious, if you will, or almost pre-planned difference of opinion on the air bled over into our private lives.
And I would think that would make for an extremely interesting program.
It was an interesting program.
An honest program.
Yeah.
And then we go to, I would consider the phase of your life where you experienced your most growth as an individual, perhaps, when you married Lorraine Perigord.
Right.
Is that correct, the pronunciation?
Yes, Lorraine Perigord.
You met her in Puerto Rico while on vacation, taking a break from the divorce, and your life was betwixt and between?
That's right. Actually, I went down to make a speech for the March of Dimes at the Caribe Hilton in Puerto Rico in San Juan. And while I was there, I met a young woman or a woman, she was in her 30s, who ran the Galleria de las Antillas, at the Caribe Hilton, and I bought a painting from her. And several months later, she came to visit me in New York, and eventually we were married. And we were married for 28 years.
And in that time, you were covering a lot of things and your growth with CBS.
Well, what happened was that I had been through a number of zigs and zags professionally, and determined that I wanted to work in news exclusively. I had done news, but I had done a variety of other things as well, and I wanted to confine my acting and commercials and things of that nature.
Theater, Broadway?
One Broadway play, yes. I actually, what had happened was that I, on CBS Radio, used to do a show called Stage Struck, which was a documentary, weekly documentary about the theater, and became fascinated by it and wanted to learn more about it at first hand. And a man by the name of Abe Burrows, the late Abe Burrows, who was one of Broadway's foremost producer-directors, or directors, really, and writers, and a fellow by the name of Martin Gable, who was now the late Martin Gable, who was married to Arlene Francis, and it was the producer, said, look, you're always talking about the theater as a reporter. Why don't you come in and learn about it for yourself at first hand? And they had a play written by a very funny man, Harry Kernitz, now the late Harry Kernitz, called Reclining Figure. And I played the juvenile lead in it, and we ran about something under 100 performances, and I learned a fair amount about the Broadway theater, enough to know that I didn't want to spend my life doing that. So little by little, my professional life has been discarding what I don't want to do and trying to find the spine of what I would like to do, which is what I've been doing since, for about 30 years now, for the last 30 years, which is news exclusively. And then finally came back to CBS. I was with the Buff at CBS from 51 to 55, and then came back to CBS in 1963 and did general assignment stuff and political reporting and civil rights reporting and things like that, working out of the New York Bureau. And then came the opportunity to do a program called 60 Minutes, which began in 68. We are now entering our 20th year. And by and large, that's all I've done for the last 20 years is 60 Minutes, a little radio and occasional political conventions and things of that nature.
I remember that was a difficult decision for you to do 60 Minutes because you had the temptation as a CBS White House correspondent, or even a nibble. Nixon was throwing some bait out to get Mike Wallace in on his team in the White House.
Well, actually, it was during the 68 campaign that, and I was covering Richard Nixon. Various reporters are attached to cover certain candidates. I was covering Richard Nixon, and immediately after the New Hampshire primary in 68, his people came to me and asked if I wanted to be press secretary to Richard Nixon. He was having trouble getting one at the time, and I thought very seriously about it because I'd never lived in Washington, and I thought that would be a good way to learn about politics from the inside, and especially inside the White House, because I did believe that Richard Nixon was going to be elected president. And in the final analysis, decided to turn it down because I probably would not be a very good press secretary. A press secretary has to have the ability to put a good face on bad facts sometimes, and sometimes to dissemble, although he doesn't want to do that, and I wasn't sure that I would be very good at that, so I stayed with CBS, and then 60 Minutes grew out of that, and it was turned out to have been a good idea to turn down the job with Richard Nixon.
And when you first heard of Dick Hewitt's idea of
Don Hewitt,
of his 60 minute concept, you thought it was a pipe dream.
I thought it was kind of a pipe dream because, look, I was an old hand even 20 years ago in radio and television, and I saw so many good notions, and I thought it was an interesting notion. They're on the air for 13 weeks or 26 weeks and out because they don't sustain themselves in news or public affairs. And no one believed, I don't think at that time, that 60 Minutes was going to be anything different from the mine run of news documentary broadcasts. And the fact of the matter is that we had a very bad rating history for the first 5 years. And I think really what happened we finally found our audience. They had us on Tuesday night opposite Marcus Welby, and they had us on Friday night at 8:30, which is a bad time. And finally, they put us on Sunday afternoons, and I figured, well, that's the end of it, after Sunday afternoons. But then along came the oil crunch in 1973, and people were not driving around in their cars on Sunday afternoon. They were staying home, and they began to fiddle with the dial. We'd already been on the air 5 years by that time, so we had our act pretty well in order. We'd gotten the gremlins out of it. And they said, this is pretty good. And then people would tune into football and hang on for us. And little by little, we built our own audience. And then, as a result of which, for the last 10 years anyway, we've been finishing in the top 10 of all 100 weekly series.
What is the most successful news program in the history of television? 60 Minutes.
Right.
And it's been running now for 20 years?
We're starting our 20th
Amazing.
season.
Also, too, I think on the personal side of Mike Wallace is the death of his son, Peter. A major influence in your life when you were betwixt and between again.
Right.
And that you went from making a salary or potential salary of in excess of $150,000. You faced the mortality, death of a family member. Then Mike Wallace, almost as if it's a promise to his son, leaves that world and goes into the news world.
In effect, yes. I used to, I used to almost hide behind the kids and say, "Well, I've got to do this,"
Yes.
which was not news, because I need the money to support the family. Well, when Peter died, it suddenly said to me, "Hey, come on, do something that he would have wanted you to do." Peter, you see, he used to work as a copy boy and helped me on Channel 13 in New York on his vacations, and he wanted to be either a writer, novelist, or I'm not sure just exactly where he would have wound up. It's conceivable he would have wound up as a journalist himself. And naturally, Chris had that leaning too, and so I thought, come on, be sensible. This, maybe you can make something good out of this awful tragedy that has happened. And that's what I tried to do with Peter's death. And that was in '62, in September of '62. So I quit everything and said, look, said to the networks, I want to go to work exclusively doing news and exclusively for the network, and I've got 6 months' money in the bank. And happily, a man by the name of Dick Salant, who was then president of CBS News in March of '63, said, come on over. And I started at about a quarter of the salary that I had been making. But it was obviously it turned out to have been a very sensible thing to do. That's happened to other people I know. It's happened to me a couple or three times in my life. When you take a chance on yourself, if you will, and try to follow what you believe you should be doing instead of not selling out, but taking the easy way out, or the taking a way out that you're not really very happy with, but you convince yourself you have to do because you have to make the living. In any case, it did work out.
It did work out. And it seems that things like that might happen to a person in his life, and if he listens, that great things could be done with those energies. The energy that came, negative energy that could be turned around into something very positive like you did. Took a lot of strength, I feel. Knowing yourself, too.
Correct, correct. And anyway, in all of your delving, I should finish up the story of the delving because,
please do. Yeah.
Because after Lorraine and I were married for 28 years, she no longer wanted to live in this part of the world. She's living in Fiji now. And so little by we separated and spent a couple of years apart and then decided to divorce. And so I was married just a year ago here on the Vineyard.
Yes.
To a woman whom I'd known for 30 years and with whose late husband I had worked, Ted Yates, Mary Yates. And Mary and I and her kids and our kids, all of whom have vineyard backgrounds, are here from time to time during the summers.
That's a nice story.
It is a nice story. For us.
Yes. And how all these lives kept touching one another through CBS.
Yes.
As they evolved.
Well, Mary, after her husband, he was a fine reporter, and he was killed on the first day of the Six-Day War on the Jordanian side. He was shot through the head. And Mary and her 3 sons were left alone, and they were, I think, 3, 5, and 7 at the time. In any case, after a while, she went to work for CBS to produce the broadcast Face the Nation. And I had known the Yates family for a long, long time.
Oh, my.
And little by little by little, she and I came together.
Well, that's a beautiful story, Mike, about the personal life of Mike Wallace.
Thank you, Will.
A nice way to finish the program also here. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And we thank you for joining us today on the Vineyard Voice, and we look forward to having you again with us next week. Thank you.